Well, good morning, Children's Health Defense. This is CHD TV. I am your host for Doctors and Scientists, Dr. Brian Hooker. And we really have a privilege. This individual he's been so prolific in publication, and also fostering collaborations, specifically starting in the COVID era around the COVID-19 vaccine, around COVID-19 countermeasures. Let's bring him on. Nicolas Hulscher, you are the epidemiologist for the McCullough Foundation. And, how many papers have you produced over the past 2-3 years? I mean, you guys are in robust analyses, the analyses that big industry, that big pharma, the government will never do. And I'm so thankful for your work. Nick, how many publications has it been?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I love Children's Health Defense. I love all your work. You guys are doing literally needed work, saving lives, doing things that nobody else is doing. But at the McCullough Foundation since 2023, we have actually contributed to the publication of over 20 scientific studies exposing the harms, particularly of the mRNA injections, as well as possible therapeutics to combat these injury syndromes. So we've been very busy on the research arm for the McCullough Foundation, and we have many coming up on the pipeline, many things we have uncovered that will shock many people.
Well, the problems with the mRNA shot, and we are not going to call it a vaccine. I'm not going to fall into that trap. The problems with the mRNA shot are legion. This is epic destruction that I don't think society's ever seen. According to Denis Rancourt, over 17 million deaths due to the COVID vaccine. I did it. Oh my goodness! Stop the COVID shot itself. But let's talk specifically about the COVID shot, and what do you think the extent of the damage is from the COVID shot? I mean, you're an epidemiologist. You've been looking at this information. You've been sourcing data. Of course, the government data that we get is nil. I'm hoping if that pipeline will open at some point in time. But let's talk, what's the extent of the damage, Nick?
The extent of the damage from the mRNA injections, both direct and indirect, is literally catastrophic. Catastrophic. And I'll go through the few main categories of harm that it has caused among the population. Number one is obviously, as we all know now, is excess deaths. And like you just mentioned, Rancourt and colleagues, they did estimate around 17 million deaths from the mRNA injections as of September 2023. That's worldwide. Here in America, we do have some estimations of the first year for mRNA injection deaths between 480,000 and 600,000. One of those is based on an extrapolation of a recent preprint that just came out. Florida Surgeon General Joe Ladapo is the senior author, right, as well as VAERS extrapolations, because we know there's about almost 40,000 deaths in VAERS linked to the COVID shots, and that's underreported by a conservative factor of around 31. It could be as high as 100, which would basically put us in the millions of deaths here in America alone. So we know this excess death situation is a major catastrophe, and it has surpassed casualty levels of world wars, including World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War. Or you can also look at the Civil War. That was around 600,000 American deaths. So this is very bad. But it's not just deaths. It's permanent disabilities. It's injuries. These shots, we now know, are cardiotoxic without a doubt.
Right.
Yep. You have myocarditis. You have cardiac arrests. You have coronary artery disease. We know it's disastrous for the brain. It's neurotoxic. It's now been linked to 86 neuropsychiatric adverse events in a study by Thorpe and colleagues using the VAERS system. mRNA and vaccine spike protein has been found in the brain of stroke patients 17 months after vaccination. So it's damaging the brain, damaging the heart, and it's extraordinarily bad for the hematological system. So your blood, we know it induces blood clotting. That's why AstraZeneca's was probably pulled off the market. They claimed it was pulled off because nobody was getting it. but it was linked to vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia, which is
Right.
fatal. Same thing with Johnson and Johnson. That was removed pretty quickly. So it damages the entire system. And we even now know that it damages the kidneys, right? It damages the gastrointestinal system. There's thousands of studies now outlining all of this. It has harmed so many things among the population. It's unthinkable they're still being fully approved. Now, one more thing is carcinogenicity, right? These shots we now do definitely believe are carcinogenic. There's we have an article out in our Substack. Over 100 studies now indicate that there's about 17 different ways, distinct mechanisms that these mRNA shots may cause cancer. So many things, so many things. And, we got to start reversing this damage and healing the population from what has been inflicted upon them.
Two things that I would really like for you to comment on. The first one is it's really difficult to look at the design of these shots and the focus on the spike protein, which is really sort of the most toxic thing that you could ever think of putting in your body, especially associated with the genetically modified COVID-19 virus. Why? Do you think this is intentional, or I mean, you don't have to pause it on that if you don't want to, but it seems like, boy, if you were trying to make a bioweapon, you couldn't do much better job than the Pfizer or the Moderna.
Right. It appears this is intentional based on the simple fact that these were never pulled off the market despite obvious signals of mass death and harm. And they continue to be administered. And, that does signal intentionality, particularly now that we know that the mRNA shots destroy fertility. A recent study by Karaman and colleagues found in rats it destroyed 60% of the non-renewable egg supply in women, as well as a recent study by Manichi and colleagues, 1.3 million women in this study. And they found that the vaccinated women had 33% lower successful conception rates compared to the unvaccinated women. And so this is going to result in tanking birth rates. As we see in 2025, birth rates are extremely low. Population size is expected in the developed countries that have administered these mRNA shots to significantly decline in
Right.
years as we move forward here. And they're still administering them. This is intentional, I believe.
I really appreciate your perspective on that, because it's very, very difficult to go down the road that this was just happenstance. Really, given the myriad issues around sort of this untested technology foisted with no real alternatives. Everything else was, sopped up and censored and maligned and out banned, in some instances. But let's talk about the data. I mean, you and I are data nerds. We enjoy data. Part of probably 50% of my job is the quest to find good data. Talk about, have you been able to go through, obviously you've seen VAERS, obviously you've seen other data sets. ICANN had to sue to get the vSafe data. Is that worth anything?
Well, in my opinion, these government databases, these vaccine adverse event databases, such as the vaccine adverse event reporting system, that has been so heavily attacked by people we like to call vaccine ideologues, those who think there can be no adverse events. They like
Right.
to attack the only system we have, because likely it shows tens of thousands of deaths and millions of injuries. Now, they claim it doesn't show causality because they say anybody can report this, but we have to understand, false reporting on VAERS, you do face the threat of imprisonment and
Right.
massive fines, and usually it is the healthcare providers and many of the actually some of the pharmaceutical companies that do report these, and so we can't just ignore this mass number of reports. So we have a study out called Determinants of COVID-19 Vaccine-Induced Myocarditis. Dr. Jessica Rose is the first author on that.
Right.
And I mean, the signals that it shows is absolutely you only need one brain cell to understand the safety signal in that If you look at the graph in that study, myocarditis reports for the COVID shots are thousands of times more than all the other vaccines combined. And it is more myocarditis reports in just a few years compared to the past 35 years combined for every single vaccine. I mean, that is a large safety signal. And that's also the same thing for deaths, right? There's so many deaths in this database, and we can't just be ignoring these signals. I mean, we just can't. We got to use what we have.
No, and they've normalized myocarditis. They've talked about how mild it is and how it can be treated with anti-inflammatories, just ignoring the fact that the 5-year mortality rate is upwards to 50% of individuals that are, and it's life-changing. It is absolutely life-changing. And there's been such a huge preponderance of people dying of TTP, pulmonary embolism, DVT. And you guys, the McCullough Foundation, and you specifically, I mean, you've been at the spear tip of this, and it is, again, it's so maligned. What do you think? I don't know if you checked out the last advisory committee on immunization practices, if you were there or not, or if you were able to check it out online. But it was really disheartening that the only individuals that really seemed to have access to the vaccine safety data link, which we were told that was all, for all intents and purposes, gone, were those individuals from HMOs and those individuals that were directly associated with the deep state pockets of the CDC. Why is that not accessible?
Right, that's a great question. Why is this critical safety data hidden from the general public? Why are we not allowed to access it? Why are we not allowed to use this data and conduct our own studies independently from major pharmaceutical interests? This is something that needs to change, right? They really have to release basically everything they have. They should let the public
Correct.
see it. Obviously it'll be de-identified, but they're the same people that are fully approving these, and yet they're hiding this data. So this is ridiculous. It has to change.
Absolutely. And the independent researchers and the independent scientists, we have to undergo IRB review anyway. We do. And so, if they're like, oh, you're going to identify individuals. Yeah, that's right. That's how I'm going to get rich in my household, is to, why am I going to do extort sick people? No. So yeah, we go through IRB review. We have to get IRB exemption letters to be able to publish in most major journals. It's just part of the process. And so, that is what they cite. That is what they quote all the time. So take that, turd of an excuse off the table, so individuals like Nick, individuals like myself can get this information. What else, when you're looking at, this is a catastrophe. I talk to treating physicians all the time, including Dr. McCullough, Dr. Corey, Dr. Merrick. They say that long COVID vaccine injury is the gift that keeps on giving. What is in the hopper to be able to treat these individuals, and what does the prospect look like for individuals that have these vaccine injuries?
Right. Well, a lot of these vaccine injuries appear to be, not all of them, right? Not all of them, but
Correct.
many of them, including this heart damage, myocarditis especially, appears to be irreversible, or it can't be fully reversed. And that when you have heart inflammation, it will result in heart scarring, including now micro scars, which have been
Right.
identified. That kind of just stays there, and that's not a good thing. But there are ways to significantly improve outcomes, for the vaccine injured. And one key thing that everybody really should do is make sure their vitamin D levels are adequate. If they're at inadequate levels, you got to bring it up to adequate levels. There are now 2 studies. One of them shows that when you have adequate vitamin D levels, it decreases symptom severity, hospitalization of COVID vaccine induced myocarditis. Another study showed adequate vitamin D levels actually decreased symptoms of chronic vaccine fatigue syndrome. right?
Right.
So it's improving this post-vaccination syndrome. So get out in the sun if you can. That is one huge thing that has to happen. Vitamin D is absolutely essential. But also at the McCullough Foundation, and Dr. McCullough has developed McCullough protocol based spike detoxification. It is published, it is indexed on PubMed, it is a clinical rationale for a base of 3 proteolytic enzymes, which include bromelain, nattokinase, and curcumin, which have mechanisms including suppression of hyperinflammation and
Right.
degradation of spike protein, at least shown in the test tube. And now we have multiple case reports of people using these enzymes and resolving some of these vaccine-induced clotting syndromes. So that's what we have. And then obviously every other vitamin and mineral. Don't eat hyper-processed garbage,
Right.
exercise, all that stuff. And that appears to be what we have so far. You know, there's some other things, but this really needs full funding. This needs so much money poured into it from our government. We really do have to start finding some robust solutions and start conducting clinical trials on the vaccine injured.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, this needs to be studied in earnest. It needs to be studied fully. The HHS and Secretary Kennedy, especially, he's moving as fast as he possibly can. Could. I mean, people have to understand that when Secretary Kennedy was appointed as HHS secretary and then confirmed, he inherited the deep state. He really did. I mean, 80,000 employees, basically, that many, if not most, were entrenched in this sort of lockstep. I want to call it the Stepford Wives. I don't know if you're old enough to have seen that movie from the 1970s where they drugged all the women in this village, so they could be compliant. But, if I see another CDC employee look at me and say safe and effective, and, they got kind of that fluoride stare at the same time, they're just kind of looking through you, you think you're just going to blow chunks. But this whole thing, what has been the level of persecution lobbed at you, Dr. McCullough, the McCullough Foundation? I mean, you guys have gone through a lot.
Yes. Yes. Well, first, Dr. McCullough, obviously, we know what happened to him. He was attacked. They tried to strip him of his license. They sued him. They did all sorts of things, defamed him.
Right.
So, yeah, they did everything to him. And myself, so the first paper I did was while I was at University of Michigan School of Public Health, was the systematic review of autopsy findings and deaths after COVID vaccination. So I presented that at the poster session, at the epidemiology session there. And I was met with all sorts of backlash. I had
Oh my
many
goodness.
professors, many of my own professors, they would just walk past me. They didn't even look at me, just ignored me. And then I actually had a professor that actually came to me, and I actually went to his office, and he told me I would have no career if I continued to do these studies on vaccine harms and if I worked with Dr. McCullough. So they were threatening me, claiming my life would be over, and they were wrong. They were wrong.
Right.
So yeah, we face a lot of things, and then the journal cartels have been retracting systemically retracting
Right.
our papers that go against the narrative, as well as many other researchers that have faced the same. And so, yeah, we are facing immense attack by the biopharmaceutical complex.
You really are. And the retractions are, in some instances, they're so pathetic that they're hilarious. The book that we all had to read in high school history or whatever, the red badge of courage, it is your red badge of courage when you've had a paper retracted for trumped up charges. Since we're all nerds, we can call it the red badge of nerdage instead of courage, because that's what we do all day. But I'm so thankful for people like you. And, we are living proof that you can do this, that you can do the right thing, that you can expose the wrongdoing, you can expose the malfeasance, you can expose the harm, and then you can do the government's job. They should be, they jacked up society. They should be cleaning up their mess. And God willing, there will be, funds put aside for this vaccine injury. The countermeasures injury compensation program. What a joke. I mean, what an absolute joke. Are you familiar with that, Nick, at all?
Yeah, the National Vaccine Compensation Program in the United
Hmm.
States is the worst in the world. A study came out a few months ago and actually compared many of the developed countries, their vaccine compensation programs. I believe Japan was the best. They had one of the
Right.
highest approval rates, review rates. America, man, like 3%, a 3% approval rate and an extremely low review rate. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're just ignoring everybody that has been injured as a result of their actions. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's bad here. It's got to be fully revamped.
Exactly, exactly. And the other thing that I think I really admire about the McCullough Foundation and the work that you're doing is that you're looking at vaccines and biologics. You're looking at other things besides the COVID injection. And Dr. McCullough, has been very, very outspoken, about things like SIDS, about things like, other types of vaccine injuries. And, this education was not around, prior to COVID-19, taking, individuals that have woken up over COVID-19, that have endured the persecution. I mean, you guys are like the Energizer Bunny, and I can't be more thankful for you moving forward. What are you looking at, Nick, into the future in terms of, some of the data sources, some of the directions that the McCullough Foundation is going to go in the future with, obviously, I'm sure you're going to continue to publish.
Yeah, well, right now we are working on a major comprehensive review paper on the link between autism and childhood vaccination. And we hope to get that done, relatively soon and try
Right.
and get that published. So we are looking at that link, trying to get a manuscript there published. But we're also starting to look at dyes, synthetic dyes and medications, some food dyes on our Substack. I've published many times now on microplastics,
Right.
and honestly, I think that's actually a pretty big problem now that these small nano microplastics are found in every single organ system, and it's increasing over time. It's now been linked to cancer and many other things. So there's so many things we got to look at, but at the McCullough Foundation specifically, not only those studies I outlined, but also we have a few very shocking case reports. We are collaborating with the Inmodia lab in Germany, and we
Okay.
have detected vaccine components in people 3 years after injection. So that's going to be coming out. We're looking at some excess mortality stats. That's another paper. And so we have so much coming up the pipeline, and we really do hope to get these published as soon as possible.
Well, I'm so thankful, that you're so prolific and that you're pushing out the truth. I feel such an alliance with the McCullough Foundation because they're doing something that Children's Health Defense is doing, and I think we were both told, no, 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 not for profits don't do science. I mean, and you look at those that sort of came before, they haven't. They've been, arbiters, and they sit on the sideline and they critique science, but actually going out, doing the yeoman's work. I mean, this is not glamorous. So you got your MPH during the COVID era, is that correct?
Yes, yes. I actually started my program at U of M in 2022.
Oh,
So I was
wow.
well into the COVID program. It was actually one of the reasons I wanted to go into epidemiology was due to the entire debacle that occurred. And I really wanted to make a difference. So I thought that would be a great way to get into public health and do it that way. And so yeah, I got in there, but honestly, 10 years before, I mean, even in like seventh grade, I was already looking into the links between vaccines and autism. I actually wrote an essay in seventh grade. I got a B plus on it where I compiled, there's like 6 or 7 studies or something looking at the links
Wonderful.
between autism and asthma and vaccines. And, honestly, um, um, so I've kind of been looking into it for a while, and so right when COVID hit, I was just I knew something was wrong right away,
Right,
especially
right.
when they started all these lockdowns and they're working on novel genetic injections, because that was something only on conspiracy forums. Back in 2015, you're reading, oh, the government's going to force inject you with genetic injections. Like, I was like, no, no, that can't happen, but it did.
I keep on wondering, okay, we were looking for the October surprise in 2024. What's going to be unleashed on society? Now we have the midterms coming up. We also have 2028, the presidential elections coming up. Nick, do you think they're going to try this again or try something? It always seems like they've got a candidate in the queue.
Yes, yes, and there's a few reasons to believe why they have something up planned, up in the pipeline. First of all, there's like hundreds of mRNA injection candidates up in the pipeline under
Right.
development. There's at least 33 self-amplifying mRNA injections in the pipeline, already approved, by the way, in Japan, European Union, for COVID-19. They're developing it for H5N1 bird flu. So we really did think bird flu was going to be the next one, but now the emergency is over, right? There has been no
Right.
human cases in such a long time. So that may fizzle away, but we do have to also remember there are over 1,000 BSL-3 and BSL-4 biolabs in the United States alone, many of which may contain pandemic potential pathogens that have been
Correct.
modified, including viruses, bacteria, and fungi. And so, any of these could be released. There's multiple lab leaks every year. It's been about 300 since 2001. That was a study by Blackcell and colleagues in the Lancet
Right.
Infectious Diseases. So, really, we got to start going into these biolabs, not only in the U.S. but in Africa. There's undeclared biolabs sponsored by Gates and Clinton foundations, which was actually outlined in a briefing by the Russian Ministry of Defense back in December. So there's all sorts of things we really have to start looking at. We got to prevent another man-made pandemic.
Right, right. Well, and one of the things that is happening, I'm so glad you brought that up because one of the things that's happening is they change the name. That, oh, no, this isn't gain of function research. This is dual purpose investigation. And then from dual purpose investigation, the new trendy term is universal vaccination. And so we're looking at bird flu because we're going to make a universal flu shot. The thing that surprised me, and I guess nothing really surprises me anymore. I mean, that sort of, that flinch doesn't really happen anymore when I hear about the government malfeasance that's going on. But, right in the NIH, there is a gain of function research on monkeypox. We know that in the CDC under Jessica Belzer, there is research on H5N1, among other influenza candidates. Gain of function research just needs to be banned outright.
You're absolutely right. It's got to be completely banned. Nobody should be doing it. There really hasn't been any benefit gained by this other than clearly an entire pandemic,
Right.
like we saw, in the past 5 years. And so they continue to do this. They continue to risk new man-made pandemics. It's got to just be completely banned. We don't have to make vaccines for viruses that don't even exist, as they literally say. Ashish Jha said that at U of M last year. He says we need to make vaccines against pandemics that might happen. But we have to remember. So not only is Bill Gates, Ashish Jha, like I just said, but also Peter Marks. He went on CNN right after he was fired and said there was all sorts of man-made threats they were prepared to deal with, and now that he's out, we're not going to be able to deal with them. So all these people are warning of man-made pandemics and bioterrorism attacks. What do they know that we don't? We really have to start looking into these people that are claiming they know that there's lots of people making bioweapons. Who are these people? It's time to go in and shut them down.
Absolutely. And it's such a huge incestuous network of these individuals that are doing it. Look at Faucier in the Netherlands, Peter Hotez doing gain of function research in conjunction with the Wuhan laboratory. And then almost in a threatening way, when Secretary Kennedy was confirmed about, all these evil pathogens that could come unleashed, I kept on hearkening back to Bullwinkle and Rocky cartoons and, and Snidely Whiplash and, they just seem like these old time villains that were threatening us, that the evil pandemic boogeyman was going to come and get us again.
Yeah, these are villain cartoon characters at this point. I mean, it's so obvious. Yeah, I mean that literally that's what Peter Marks even. He acts like one. I mean, really, when he goes on TV and claims this stuff, it's just ridiculous. Even Paul Offit, he keeps going on the news and attacking RFK because he's obviously terrified. His.
I mean, heaven forbid we check his records. My goodness. Right. Well, Nick, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you for, your continued work, your continued research, and, so many different threats that are coming up against us. And then doing God's work and being able to undo this damage.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this important episode of Doctors and Scientists. Make sure that you look at the McCullough Foundation, that you look at Nicolas Hulscher and his quite impressive portfolio of information. This is stuff you need to read science. Everybody needs to read science, so check it out.
So tell everyone your name, please.
I'm Cody, and this is Coy.
Hello, Coy.
He's
How
5
old
months.
are you?
He's 5 months old.
5 months old. All right, so you have 4 children.
I do.
And 2 are vaccinated and 2 are not.
Yes.
All right, let's go back to the beginning and talk about the first child that you had. Talk us through that.
So my oldest, Billy, we did all the vaccines with her. I didn't know any different. After she got her second set of vaccines, she broke out. The next day, she broke out in hives. And I took her right away back in. They said it was eczema. And they said, change your soaps, use Dove soap and all this. So I tried it, didn't work. So it lasted about a week and it went away. And then we did her next round and same thing happened. And then she got, all of a sudden had a double ear infection, a bad fever. The hives came back. So I switched over to goat milk soap and lotions and thought it was, stuff that was in the soaps and stuff. And then it wouldn't go away, so I took her back in, and they told me it was my breast milk. So I changed my diet up, and she started having some little problems. And then after one set of her shots, her hands, I don't know if they can see that, her hands swelled up.
How old is she now? About 1 or something?
She was about almost a year old, yeah. And her little hands swelled up so tight that she couldn't open her hands up all the way, and it felt like her skin was going to rip. And they were bright red, so I took her in emergency room.
Wow, look at his hands.
Yeah, and again they were just telling me it's eczema. So I was like, that's not eczema. So and then shortly after I had my second daughter, and I did her first set of shots at 2 months old, and the next day I took them both in for shots at the same time. The next day when she went to the restroom, her diaper was full of blood. So I ran her in the emergency room, me and my husband, and they did a test on her and stuff. They said, oh, again, it's your breast milk. You need to change what you're eating. And then that's when I was like, no, this is not, because nothing has happened up until this day with her. Like this has to be something else. So I started talking to people, and that's when I started researching and reading all kinds of anything I can get my hands on. And I was like, no, it's the vaccine. So we quit all vaccines. Like that was it. And after that, they never had another eczema problem. They never had nothing. Like it stopped. So then when we had our third daughter, we didn't do anything. We didn't do the vitamin K. We didn't do the eye ointments. We didn't do anything. She's never had a problem. The only time we've had to go to the hospital is if she, one time she busted her lip open, so she needs some stitches. But she's only had colds a small handful of times. It's only lasted like 12 hours. Her immune system is just amazing. When he was a month old, he got RSV, and he was over it within like less than a week. He never had any vaccines.
Okay, stop you a second. So he was born in a hospital?
I had to have a C-section with him because he was breech.
And how did you get through? We're not doing vitamin K or anything.
I had to sign a ton of paperwork, but with him, so that was another thing I wanted to kind of share was when my third daughter was born, we didn't do anything, but I had to sign all the paperwork saying that we weren't going to do any of the vitamin K or anything. They never pushed us. Like, it wasn't, the nurses I had were great. They never double questioned it. They supported it. Same with him, my doctor and the nurses we had, they never questioned it, never pushed me for it. They just said, okay, well, you have to sign this. And I'm like, that's fine. We did it with our other daughter. But when, after his C-section, there was a doctor I'd never seen before, and he kept putting his head in our room once we got moved into the recovering room. And he would look in, and he did it 3 or 4 times, and I was still kind of drowsy. And my husband was like, we were like, are you looking for someone? And he never said anything. He'd he'd leave. He'd like, no. About the 4th time he did it, my husband had left for the day to go check on get our daughters to pick them up from our co-op, because we were going to surprise him with the baby, because they didn't know we were having him. It was going to be a big surprise. And he had came back in, and because my husband wasn't there, he came in and was like, I saw on your chart you refused the vitamin K shot with him, and you're not doing circumcision. You need to do the vitamin K, because if he has a brain bleed, we won't be able to stop it if he does. And I was like, well, why would he have a brain? Like, it didn't make sense. And I was like, no, we're not doing it. I've researched this. I'm not doing the vitamin K. And he was like, well, when he does have the brain bleed, just to let you know, we can't save him. And then he walked out. And I was like, I don't even know who you are. Like, he came in and left. And it was like, it was a fear thing. And I never saw him again after that. Like, it was like he waited for my husband to leave. And it was weird. It was weird. I never saw this guy before, so.
So same dad.
Same
with
dad.
all the
My
children? Okay.
yeah, my
And so
husband.
same genetic, everything.
Everything.
Environment.
Yep.
And so you've got 2 vaccinated, 2 unvaccinated. Which group are healthier?
Oh, definitely the unvaccinated. Definitely. My oldest, so when we've had things, everybody gets sick. You have a cold flu bug go through your house, but it takes her recovery time is about 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks to get over anything. And even after that, she has the sniffles, and it just kind of lingers. With my youngest daughter, it's 12 hours and she's back to herself. Her immune system is just so much better than her older sisters. And I could just guess it's because she's not vaccinated and hers hasn't been compromised.
So with this little one, you say you had RSV at 1 month. This is important, because right now the fear mongering for the parents is that your child that's unvaccinated gets RSV, will not make it.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is.
They are
These
so
parents
scared.
are freaking out, and off they go.
Yeah.
Talk us through what RSV looked like in your 1 month old and how you got through it.
He was just really congested and wheezy a little bit, but I just did. We did a lot of steam showers. We'd sit in the bathroom and let the steam. I did an Epsom salt bath with him every night, and I kept Vicks on the bottom of his feet, and he was fine. We didn't. There wasn't like bad fevers. There wasn't nothing. And when we took him in for, it was for a checkup, is when I found out he had it, because I knew he was congested, but I figured it was just because of this cold season and stuff. She's like, oh, he has RSV. Do you want to do the RSV vaccine? And I was like, no, why would I do it? Vaccines are supposed to be before, if they have it anyways. But yeah, so I told her no. But he was fine. It wasn't.
People are just not clever, are they? You have to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
They're just salespeople.
Yeah, it does. And it's fear. They use fear.
So what's your advice to the young mum that's, okay, let me give you a scenario. We recently got a message from a young mum, first vaccinated her first child, and now has 3 years old, diagnosis of autism. She's pregnant due in September, and she wrote and said, I don't want to give any more vaccinations, but how do you get over the fear of what they tell you will happen to your child if you don't vaccinate? How do you get through all that fear that they throw at you? What
Research. And research until you feel comfortable with the decision, because once you put the vaccine in your body, there's no going back. You can't pull it out, and you can vaccinate it anytime if you do decide to do that, but you can't change what it does once you do it.
Are you afraid that your unvaccinated children will get measles, mumps, rubella?
No, I'm not, because I know that their immune system can handle it.
And what else do you do to support that? Is food important to you?
Oh yeah, healthy eating, definitely. We do fast food once in a great while, but we're not big fast food eaters. We try and eat as clean as possible. We raise a lot of our own beef and stuff, so yeah.
So to this young mother, you say?
Health, it's all about their health, their eating, I guess.
And what about the fear that she's feeling?
Trust your gut big time, because once you hear that little voice that says, I shouldn't be doing this, just go with it. Don't fall into that trap. like I did. I knew I shouldn't have did it, and something was telling me, my daughter, you know, I don't want to do this, I don't want to give it to her, but you know, they tell you this is what you have to do, and that's what generations have been raised to do, is to fall into that and listen to the doctors. The doctors know best, but moms know best, not the doctors.
And you see an undeniable difference between.
Yes, big time.
Even
He's
as soon as
much
they're
healthier.
holding their heads up and stuff.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, my youngest daughter, she started walking at 5 months, and he's already sitting up on his own. And my oldest daughter, she didn't start walking until a week before her first birthday. So I think that hindered it a little bit too.
I think we're really starting to bore him now.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thank you very much for the story.
Sorry.